Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today we are discussing a ship that for a very long time has been considered one of the worst, if not the single worst ship to grind through in the entire game. A ship that I got stuck grinding through from the base hull through all three hull types to get to her tier 10 counterpart in a very slow and very painful grind. And we're going to be talking about her, how she's doing in today's World of Warships, and whether or not you should bother grinding through her or free XPing through her. And that ship is the one, the only, the mighty Izumo. Now, the Izumo of old is not like the Izumo of today. And I can tell you that the Izumo that you get to grind through today is a far cry from what we had to deal with back in the day. And I know, of course, obviously that's easy to say once you've grinded through the ship, right? Like, I have the fully upgraded hull, right? I don't have to worry about grinding from the A hull through the B hull, right? But, she's gotten pretty darn nice over the years, fellas. This is one of the ships in the game that has aged quite well and has received several bits of love from wargaming along the way. So, to give you guys an example of what it was like to get through this thing back in the day, before, I believe they started really giving her some love around patch 6 or 7.0, but before all that happened back in the day, first off, there were 3 holes to get through. There's only 2 holes to get through now. You go through an A hole and a B hole, and that's it. It used to be A, B, C back in the gap. And let me tell y'all, those first 2 holes were complete trash. You had no AA. Like, you see that very straight line of secondary guns on the side that are also dual-purpose AA guns? You got 4 of those. Not 4 per side, 4 all in all. 2 per side. And all the little AA guns you see bolted to the deck, barely any of that was there. Then with the beta hull, you got 3 per side. So now you got 6. Like, oh, you get a little bit more now. You got a couple more AA guns mounted around the ship. And then with the C hull, Charlie hull, you get what you see on screen right now. A ton of AA guns everywhere, and it's still not even that great. And keep in mind, I went through this, and a lot of older players went through this ship pre-CV rework, when the CVs could literally nuke you off the map in a singular run. And guess who they see with no AA to speak of? That's just a big old huge damaged pinata. That's right. Guys trying to get to the Yammy. And keep in mind, too, like, you had to grind through 3 holes in this thing to get to the Yammy. So, yeah. That's nice that you ain't got to slog through that. Another thing that they buffed too was the upper deck armor. So you see how you have her stern deck and her bow deck. The deck in the middle, that all used to be 32 millimeters of armor. So from bow to stern, everything was 32. Which means, of course, every light cruiser player in the game, they're trying to get their pins up over 32 millimeters of armor by, well, running IFHE. So they can pin, the outer extremities and such, which means most of them can do that. So they could just farm the ever-loving crap out of you back in the day. Literally hit any part of your deck, they could pin it. They could pin the superstructure, they could pin the bow deck, the stern deck, and the central deck, all in all. That got buffed to 57 millimeters of armor. So now you eat a lot less damage from HE shells. Because, again, they didn't have to care where they hit you on their deck as long as they hit you on your deck, right? They were going to pin you. But now they got to try to hit the bow or the stern portion of your deck for that. And then one huge buff was they improved the armor penetration of her 16-inch guns. She has 9 410 millimeter 16-inch guns, and they were pretty good back in the day once you got used to the Japanese dispersion pattern, which we'll get to that in a second. But they still felt a little lackluster. But now they really bite into targets, especially heavy armored targets. There's nary a ship that can really walk away from getting broadsided by an Izumo when the Izumo's got your flat broadside. And then one of the best buffs that the Izumo has gotten in its entire long, sad existence up until this point was a Sigma buff from 1.8 to 2.0 Sigma, which is a massive, massive pickup when you're a battleship, especially when you're working with the Japanese battleship dispersion. So the Japanese battleship dispersion is very inconsistent. It's this weird, like, star-shaped pattern that is really, really random. Like the American battleships, by comparison, they have this nice oval-shaped dispersion pattern. It's very consistent. Yes, of course, RNG still throws the shells around here and there, but the Japanese battleship one is just not consistent. So when you have a lower Sigma, it really, really hurts. But now that it's 2.0, that's quite nice. And now you can actually get your shells to go where you aim. And when you get the shells to go where you aimed, they're going to pin because of the increased pins now. And it's such a beautiful thing to witness now playing the Izumo. So those buffs just completely transformed the ship. Now, is the ship like amazing and almighty and you're going to dominate with it? No, it's not. But it's far, far more workable today, and a ship that I actually take out from time to time just to play. I would have never have done that with old Izumo because it was truly a painful experience to get through. So today's Izumo is pretty nice for the meta. You have 9 16-inch guns that hit hard with 2.0 Sigma and a configuration that allows you to stay pretty steeply angled. In most cases too, you do want to kind of just forget that turret number 3 exists. That is still a big downside of the ship, is that turret number 3 is facing backwards and it can't do what the Nelson can do and like what the Lennon can also do, where, you know, that third turret can just sneak on underneath turret number 2 when it's rotating. It has to take the long way around. So in many cases, just forget that bad boy exists and stay steeply angled to the target. She also has some incredibly thick side armor to the point of where you're not really going to get pinned if you're angled. Unless, again, you're facing like, you know, a super ship like the Satsuma with its 20-inch AP, or something that has improved pin angles, right? Even then, right, you have to be pretty shallowly angled for them to bite into it. It's got a ridiculously thick belt. So you can take advantage of your turret placement and either stay sharply angled bow in or bow out. I would recommend bow in if you can, because she has that weird hanger in the back with a lot of 90-degree angles, right, that AP can get through. So if you can get bow into the target at a comfortable range, sit there angled, snipe with your AP, wonderful AP, and then later on in the game, you push in. And now you have a well-armored ship with hard-hitting 16-inch guns that you should have most of your health intact because you've been sitting back at mid to long-range range. It really does train you to play the Yami, because traditionally that's how I play the Yami. I play it further out at the beginning of the match, and as the match timer starts to tick down, I get closer and closer and closer, preserving my HP pool, and now you push it with your 9 18-inch guns and have at it, right? Same thing here in the Izumo. Another good thing about the Izumo, especially now since they, buffed her deck armor, is that if you observe, you'll see she doesn't really have superstructure. You got like the conning tower and the stack, and that is it. This looks like something you design in Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, right? Like, you have to put the minimum amount of superstructure on the ship, and you just put the conning tower and one smokestack, because that's what the game, that's the bare minimum the game will require you to put on the ship, right? So there's really not a lot of superstructure at all for ships to bite into with their AP, like a lot of battleships do. You can't pin their bow, you can't pin their side armor because they're angled, so you just yeet your AP into their superstructure and you rip them for 12 to 13k, depending upon what you're firing and how big their superstructure is. It's basically the opposite of the Germans, right, that have these cities built on top of their ships. So you can't really get chunked by AP in that regards, and you really can't get farmed by HE in that regards either. So that's very nice in today's World of Warships, especially when it comes to CVs too, because if CVs can't pin your deck, they can't, again, just go for your superstructure and rip it for a decent amount of damage because it doesn't exist. Now, when it comes to AA, yes, there is more AA on the base hull and obviously AA on the fully researched hull. It's still not a plane blender, right, fellas? Like, no Japanese ship is except for, like, the Key, right? So, it's still not a plane blender, but we don't have to deal with RTS CVs, so it's kind of a fair trade. She has good torpedo protection as well, so you're pretty well protected against CV torps and submarine torps, and of course just good old-fashioned torps, right? So she's a tough ship. She has some really, really comfortable guns. Some of the best guns at tier 9. Again, it's crazy how just a couple of small tweaks gets this ship from being a miserable ship and a miserable grind to one that's actually quite enjoyable in my opinion in today's World of Warships. So obviously, yeah, grind through a stock hull in any ship isn't a pleasant time, but the ship's come a long way. I wouldn't really recommend skipping through her with free XP because once you do upgrade the hull, it's a pretty nice ship, so no real need to waste the XP there. Just use it to get from the stock hull to the fully researchable hull, and then you'll be good and you'll have a nice, comfortable battleship for you waiting for you here on your grind to the Yami. So guys, that's my 2 cents on the Izumo, today's World of Warships. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comments down below. Hope you all have a wonderful Saturday and wonderful weekend. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.